The sirens went off before the sky lit up. That's how I remember it. One moment, I was on yard 2, leaning against the concrete wall and watching inmates run laps like clockwork, and the next, I heard the kind of low, rising wail that only means one of 2 things around here: a riot, or something worse. I looked up, not because I heard something, but because I felt it, like the air had stopped moving, like the entire prison had inhaled and forgot how to exhale. That's when the sky cracked open. It started as a pinpoint, bright, white-hot, like a welder's torch aimed from space. It screamed, God, it screamed, ripping through the sky like it hated the earth. Then it hit. Dead center of the yard. Right in the middle of a group of 6 inmates mid-push-up. I don't know if they even saw it. The explosion wasn't fire. It wasn't smoke. It was this light. White and dense, like lightning had been turned into fog. Everyone hit the ground, me included. I don't remember falling. I remember waking up on my back, ears ringing, boots half off, the taste of copper in my mouth. And the yard? Gone. Not structurally, but spiritually. The outer fences were still up, the guard tower still intact, but the middle of the yard, the place where the meteor hit, had become a crater. And one man stood in it, an inmate, shirtless, bleeding from his nose, but standing tall. Grayson Rudd, serving a life sentence for triple homicide, 6'3", former linebacker before everything went to hell in his life. He looked around, slowly, calmly. Then he smiled. And when the nearest guard aimed a taser at him, Grayson crushed the metal frame of the yard's pull-up bar with one hand. The first taser wire hit him square in the chest. Grayson didn't even flinch. I saw the darts quiver in his skin, the wires twitching like nervous snakes, and then he laughed. Not a roar, not a scream, just a low, mocking chuckle like we were all part of some sad inside joke he'd been told hours ago. Again, he said. Officer Darnell fired the second shot. Full charge, right into his ribs. Nothing. Grayson stepped forward and yanked both wires free, tearing them out like itchy threads. His smile widened. Behind him, steam hissed from the crater, like the earth was still trying to figure out what had just happened. Control, this is Yard 2. We've got a situation. I shouted into my shoulder radio. Meteor impact. One inmate still standing. He's not normal. The radio squawked and hissed, then silence. Grayson turned toward me. I was 40 feet away. That should have felt safe. It didn't. He took another step. Then another. Each footfall pressed a perfect boot print into the concrete like it was fresh snow. His breathing was slow, steady, measured, like a man out for a stroll. His face was relaxed, almost serene, like he was finally at peace with who he was. A few inmates who hadn't bolted to the walls stood in place, frozen. Maybe they were trying to decide whether to run or bow down. One poor kid, a skinny new intake with face tattoos and too much attitude, tried to square up. Grayson didn't punch him. He pushed him. Just a hand to the chest. But the kid flew 10 feet into the air and landed on a bench that snapped like a matchstick. I heard the bones break. That's when the screaming started. That's when everyone realized this wasn't a fight. It was containment. I ran for the gate, keys already in hand, slamming the override and shouting to whoever was listening. Yard breach. All units respond. Lockdown protocol now. But before the gate could finish unlocking, I heard concrete crack behind me. I turned. Grayson was running. At me. And it was like watching a freight train fall off its rails. There wasn't time to think. 1 second, Grayson was across the yard, maybe 30 feet. The next, he was close enough that I could see the heat still rising off his skin like he'd been dipped in lightning. I barely got the gate open before he slammed into me. It felt like getting hit by a car. My whole body folded backward, air gone, vision gone, bones screaming. I flew 5 feet through the metal doorway and hit the concrete wall inside the corridor so hard my badge snapped off my chest. He didn't follow. That was the part that stuck with me most. He could have. The door hadn't even finished swinging shut, but he just stood there in the yard, breathing, watching me. Not like prey, more like a failed experiment. As I crawled to my feet, he turned his back to the gate and walked slowly toward the other inmates. Some screamed, some tried to run, a few dropped to their knees, hands raised, eyes wide. Grayson didn't lash out. He didn't speak. He just watched, like he was waiting for something to settle inside him. Something new. I slapped the emergency lockdown switch and felt the doors behind me hiss closed. Red lights bathed the hallway, and sirens echoed through the block. Up above, in central control, I heard the intercom system sputter on. "This is Captain Weaver. Full facility lockdown initiated. Yard 2 compromised. I repeat, Yard 2 compromised. All guards fall back to secure zones. Inmate Grayson Rudd has been enhanced by unidentified meteor activity. Consider him lethal, non-compliant, and uncontainable." Jesus Christ, I muttered, still coughing, still trying to stand straight. I limped toward the inner corridor, past the armory door. Inside, other guards were gearing up. Riot vests, rubber shotguns, flashbangs, faces pale, no one asking the one question we all thought. How do you stop a man who doesn't feel pain anymore? Patel, the unit's tactical lead, looked up as I entered. "You saw him?" I nodded, barely. "Good," she said. "Then you know this isn't a recovery op anymore." She dropped a shotgun into my arms. "This is war." Patel handed me 2 extra shells and a bottle of ammonia tablets. "For when you feel like passing out," she said, patting my shoulder. "Don't." I barely nodded. My ribs screamed when I shifted, but adrenaline kept me upright. We all stood in the small armory, 6 of us total. Me, Patel, Simmons, Deeks, Valerio, and Nurse Ho from the infirmary, who had refused to evacuate. "Somebody's going to need patching up," she'd said, "and somebody else will need the truth on record." I watched through the grainy security monitor as the Yard 2 cameras refreshed in staggered loops. Grayson paced in the center of the crater like an animal in a cage of his own making. He wasn't charging anymore. He wasn't smashing gates. He was just waiting. Like he'd figured out we had no idea what we were dealing with. Then the feed glitched, flickered, came back, and 3 inmates were missing. Gone. No alarms, no breaches. Just gone. Patel leaned over my shoulder. "He's recruiting." "No way," Simmons said. "You saw what he did to Martinez, threw him like a rag doll." "Martinez resisted," Patel muttered. "He's looking for believers." And just like that, I got it. It wasn't about strength anymore. It was about control. Grayson had tasted power, not just over his body, but over fear, over systems. And now, he was playing God in a concrete temple. "We've got to move," I said, "now, before he builds a following." Patel nodded. "We can trap him, lure him toward the industrial corridor. It's reinforced, minimal access points." "We bait him?" Deeks asked, adjusting his vest. "No," I said. "We let him bait us, and then we turn the walls on him." Patel raised an eyebrow. "You volunteering?" I didn't answer, because I was already heading for the door. The yard was quiet when I stepped out. Not silent. There was still wind, still the low buzz of damaged floodlights flickering overhead, but it felt hollow, like sound didn't want to stay long in this place anymore. The crater sat like a wound in the center of it all. Grayson was at the edge, crouched. He had no shirt, no shoes, just sweatpants and skin that steamed faintly in the cold. He was drawing something in the dirt with a piece of broken rebar, long curved lines that connected in strange spirals. He didn't look up when I stepped closer. "I thought they'd send Patel," he said calmly. "They didn't," I replied. "She's smarter than that." A pause. He smiled. I could hear your limp from halfway across the yard. I held the shotgun loose at my side. He knew I wouldn't raise it. Not yet. Not while I was still trying to understand what he'd become. What are you doing out here, Grayson? He stood, turning slowly. His eyes didn't glow. His veins didn't bulge. He just looked settled, like something in him had clicked into place. I'm becoming, he said. That rock, it wasn't random. It was a gift, and it didn't just give me strength. He tapped his temple. It cleared the static. For the first time in years, I can think. I can hear everything, the layers, the lies. Do you know what this place does to people? This prison? This world? He stepped forward. I didn't move. It grinds us down, bit by bit. We forget who we were. Then one day we wake up and we're wearing orange, getting barked at by broken men with badges. You killed 3 people, Grayson. He nodded, and the world barely noticed. But now, he spread his arms wide. Now they'll remember. I glanced behind him. Movement. 2 figures, shadows, watching from the far wall. Inmates. Silent. Waiting. Patel was right. He was building something. Not just an army. A faith. Come with me, I said. We've got containment protocols, doctors. Maybe we can figure out what the meteor did to you. Reverse it. His smile faded. Why would I want to be less than this? Then faster than my eyes could follow, he moved. And suddenly, the shotgun was gone, crushed in his fist, and I was on my back, choking on dust and copper and the sound of my own heartbeat. Grayson crouched beside me. This place belongs to me now, he whispered. And you're going to be my message. He didn't kill me. He could have. That part still haunts me. Instead, Grayson stood there for a beat too long. The evacuation order went out just after sunset. Unit D was cleared first, closest to the yard, highest risk. The inmates didn't resist. Most didn't even ask why. They'd heard the rumors, seen the crater through the yard's fencing. Some had seen Grayson move. We relocated them to the industrial wing, locking down the internal corridor doors behind them. Just metal and darkness between us and whatever he was becoming out there. No announcements, no alarms. Just quiet boots, clipped voices, and the tension of a facility trying to act like it wasn't crumbling from the inside. Patel set up a command post in the South Block's laundry room. No cameras, 1 exit, and thick enough walls to muffle gunfire. A portable terminal flickered against the back wall. She had a floor plan pulled up, blinking red sectors marking compromised systems. Grayson's crater was right in the center. He stopped moving, she said, pointing to a thermal feed still barely functioning from Yard 2. Still crouched in that same position. No pulse change, no aggression, just waiting. For us to do something stupid, I said. Exactly. Then the lights in the block dimmed. Not completely out, just down. Like the power itself was second-guessing its own presence. Simmons leaned into the doorway. Got a problem. I followed him into the hallway, heart already climbing. We rounded the corner to the corridor leading back toward Unit D's temporary hold. The door was open. The keypad was melted. Melted, as in warped and dripping like wax. And every single cell inside, empty. Patel joined us and stopped dead. No breach alarms, no opened checkpoints. How the hell did he? Then we heard it. A sound no prison should ever hear. Cheering. Low. Rhythmic. Growing. It echoed from the yard, where Grayson still knelt in the crater like some prophet waiting for thunder. Only now he wasn't alone. The missing inmates had returned. And they were circling him, beating their chests, chanting his name. Not like a gang, like worshippers. I stared through the yard's observation window, hands clenched. I think we're past containment, I said quietly. Patel didn't look at me. Her voice was calm. Then it's time for suppression. We went in just before midnight. 5 of us, head-to-toe riot armor, full visors down, suppressors on the muzzles, flashbangs loaded, no lights, just thermal goggles and a tight plan. Breach from the south access tunnel, use the collapsed fencing to enter silently, form a perimeter, then neutralize. Patel took point. I followed, shotgun tight in my grip, this one loaded with modified slugs. Not lethal, technically, but nothing about this situation felt like it belonged in the manual. We reached the edge of the yard with no incident. No guards posted, no spotlights from the towers, just the moon hanging overhead like a camera lens. The crater looked deeper now. Not wider deeper. Like the ground was folding inward, being pulled from below. Grayson stood at its center again, but this time he wasn't alone. The inmates, 8 or 9 of them, were lined up shoulder to shoulder around the rim, backs to us, heads bowed. And they were humming. Low, syncopated, not music. Not a chant, just noise. The kind that worms into your teeth. Patel held up a fist. We froze. Then movement. One of the inmates twitched, not a flinch. A full-bodied jerk, like a puppet yanked on invisible string. His arm shot straight into the air, shaking, then dropped. The next inmate followed. Then the next. All of them, one by one, raising and lowering their arms like a signal relay. And in the middle? Grayson finally looked up. Even through the goggles, I could feel his eyes on me, like a heat I didn't know I could feel until it was inside me. He opened his mouth, and I swear, my vision wobbled, like the very air bent around his voice. Too late, he said. Then all 9 inmates turned at once, and charged. Patel didn't shout. She didn't blink. She just moved, dropped the first one with a beanbag to the sternum, pivoted, fired again. 2 down. I hit a third in the leg. He didn't fall. Didn't even slow. The guy slammed into me with both fists like he was trying to knock me out of my body. We hit the ground hard, my helmet jarring sideways, vision skewed. I got a knee between us and pushed off just in time to see Patel go down under 2 of them. The thing was, they weren't just inmates anymore. They didn't bleed right. They didn't move right. They moved like they'd forgotten pain. Or maybe just outgrown it. Behind them, Grayson stepped forward. His voice wasn't a shout. It was a sermon. You tried to cage men like animals, but you forgot what happens when animals adapt. He smiled. We evolve. I scrambled to my feet, shoulder on fire, visor cracked from the impact. The inmate who hit me, Roddy I think, was already back up, head cocked unnaturally sideways like he couldn't quite feel where his neck ended. He lunged again. I fired point blank. The slug caught him in the ribs, and this time he went down, but not like a man. He collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut, limp and silent. No scream, no groan. Just stillness. Then he started crawling toward me. I backed up, nearly tripping over another guard grappling with 2 inmates beside the crater. Simmons. He was bleeding from his ear, swinging his baton like a lunatic, eyes wide with animal panic. Patel was gone. I spun around, found her 10 feet away, half dragging one of the inmates toward the wall, arm wrapped around his neck in a chokehold. She met my eyes, nodding once. Still breathing. Still fighting. And Grayson? Grayson was at the crater's edge, arms raised now, speaking not to us, but to them. His voice boomed across the yard deeper than before. It vibrated in my skull. It sounded like it came from inside the earth. You've seen the truth now. You've felt it. You were never meant to be weak. You were made to be broken so they could call it order. He pointed at me. At him. The warden. The judges. The badge wearers. The inmates looked at me like they finally had permission. A line had been crossed. Not a riot. Not revenge. Rapture. And I realized, right then, Grayson had no intention of escaping this place. Meant to keep it. To make it something new. Something ruled by strength, by his definition of power. The crater behind him began to glow, faint, sickly, like embers in a dying fire. But the ground beneath it, it pulsed. Something under there was still alive. I felt a hand grab my shoulder. Patel. "We need to fall back," she said through clenched teeth. "Now." I nodded. We ran, not because we were cowards, but because we understood. This wasn't a prison anymore. It was his temple. We locked ourselves in the generator corridor behind South Block. Steel doors, 3-inch bolts, reinforced walls built back in the Cold War days when they thought someone might actually nuke the place. It wasn't exactly comfortable, but it was secure, and right now, that was all we had. Patel slid down the wall, body heaving, helmet off, face slick with sweat and dust. I sat beside her, hands shaking as I reloaded what was left of the shells in my vest. 2, maybe 3. "That wasn't just charisma," she said, breathless. "No," I agreed, my throat dry. "It's the rock. It's still changing him." She nodded slowly. "Not just him, the others. You saw the way they moved. They don't feel pain. They don't—" She paused, shuddering. "Stop." I leaned my head back against the concrete. My ears were still ringing from whatever Grayson's voice had done out there. It had weight like a pressure front rolling over your bones. Not just loud, wrong. "You think he even wants out?" I asked quietly. Patel looked at me. "No, he wants us in, wants to reshape it, from the inside. Inmates, guards, walls, power grid. He's got the blueprint already. He's building a new order." I didn't want to believe it, but everything she said made too much damn sense. He didn't break out when the fences were open. He didn't kill when he didn't need to. He recruited, one by one, convincing them that the system was the disease, and that he was the cure. That meteor didn't just give him strength. It gave him vision. The intercom buzzed overhead. An old analog system. Only a few terminals could still reach this one. It crackled. Once then a voice came through. Warden Briggs. "South Corridor team, report. We've regrouped in central control. Orders are pending. Do not re-enter Yard 2 under any circumstances." Patel pressed the comm. "Sir, the crater's active. We believe the meteor is still emitting some kind of field. Psychological, maybe biological. It's not just him anymore." Briggs didn't hesitate. "We know. Cameras show at least 12 now under his influence, maybe more. He's commandeered kitchen storage, laundry, even the workshop. They're calling him the warden below." I felt ice crawl up my spine. "The hell does that mean?" I whispered. "It means," Patel said grimly, "they already think he's in charge." Silence. Then Briggs again. "We're considering full structural breach, explosives, level the yard, burn it clean." "No," I snapped. "There's staff out there, inmates who haven't turned." "And if we don't act," Briggs said, "there won't be anyone left to save." The line went dead. Patel stood slowly, eyes fixed on the far wall. "We've got one shot at this," she said. "We cut power to the block, starve the influence, separate him from whatever's left of that rock. We drown the god before the cult finishes building his throne." I stood beside her. Half my ribs felt cracked, blood in my mouth, legs shaking. But I nodded. Because there was no one else. And the longer we waited, the more the prison stopped feeling like a prison, and started feeling like his kingdom. The route to the electrical control room cut through 2 sub-basements, a maintenance tunnel, and 1 security corridor with a camera blind spot. We hoped. The trick wasn't the distance. It was knowing how many people we might run into, who used to be ours. Patel had a map. She memorized the circuit layouts, handed me a flashlight and a backup battery, then tightened the strap on her vest like she was cinching up before a funeral. "I don't want to kill anyone who used to wear this uniform," she said, "but if they try to stop us—" "I know," I said. "Same." We moved fast, hunched low, hugging shadows. The facility was too quiet. No alarms, no announcements, just distant echoes, boots, furniture, Maybe chanting, maybe machines. Impossible to tell what was normal anymore. We passed the infirmary. The lights were on. Nurse Ho's desk was empty. Blood on the floor. Not much, just a smear, like someone had crawled or been dragged. I held my breath and stepped through the double doors, and saw what used to be Officer Valerio sitting upright on a cot, face blank, mouth moving like he was muttering to himself. He didn't blink, didn't look at us. He just rocked, slowly. Patel raised her weapon. I stopped her. Wait. I moved in slow, my steps careful. Valerio, I said softly, you okay? He didn't answer, just rocked. Then he laughed. Quiet, like something private and broken had slipped out of his mouth. Still fighting? He said. His voice was calm, clear. He says you'd do that. My spine stiffened. Who? Valerio looked up. His eyes were pitch black. Not empty. Just wrong. Like someone had painted over them with ink. He says you'll fail, he whispered. But it's important that you try. He smiled. Not cruel, not insane. Just resigned. Like a man quoting scripture he didn't write. Patel stepped beside me. We're leaving. We backed out slowly. Valerio never moved from the cot. He just watched us leave, lips still moving, still whispering, still believing. We reached the lower tunnel 10 minutes later. The door to the electrical control room had been forced open, bent inward, like someone had headbutted it until the steel surrendered. Inside, the breakers were intact, but someone had scrawled words into the cement wall with what looked like black ash. He burns brighter in darkness. Patel stared at the words. Think this is a warning? No, I said, my stomach turning. It's a welcome. Patel flipped the main breaker switch. Nothing happened. No blackout. The lights in the room stayed on, humming quietly, too quietly. Then the emergency lights flickered on throughout the tunnels, washing the corridors in an eerie red glow. Patel cursed under her breath. Override. Someone's cut into the backup system. I scanned the room, panicked and focused. The electrical panel was more complex than I'd expected, with wires rerouted, circuits crossed. This wasn't a simple sabotage. It was a precise reconfiguration. Grayson was one step ahead. Then the intercom buzzed again. Only this time, it wasn't static or the warden's voice. It was Grayson's. Welcome to the new order, he said, calm and cold. You tried to blind me, but I see in the dark. The speakers crackled, then went silent. Before we could react, a dozen figures emerged from the shadows, guards and inmates alike. Their faces were blank, eyes glazed, bodies moving with a dreadful synchronization. Patel raised her shotgun, but before she could fire, they charged. The battle in that small room was brutal, fists smashing panels, bodies slamming into walls, the echo of shattered glass and desperate grunts. I was pinned against a console when I saw Patel fall, a guard's fist crashing into her face. I scrambled free, pulling my last slug and firing at the nearest attacker. The slug tore through his shoulder, but he kept coming. And then I heard it. Grayson's voice, through the intercom again. Resistance is the spark that fuels the transformation. Welcome to evolution. I knew then it wasn't just about power or strength. It was about control. And we were all caught in his web. I barely had time to process the chaos before Patel's hand grabbed mine, pulling me to my feet. We have to move, she hissed, wiping blood from her lip. The room was a war zone. Panels ripped open, wires sparking, bodies sprawled on the concrete floor. But the worst part wasn't the damage. It was the way the infected moved, like they weren't just following orders, but sharing a single, twisted mind. As we backed toward the emergency exit, Patel jabbed her finger at a flickering monitor. The meteor, she said, eyes wide. It's still emitting something. some kind of signal. That's what's controlling them. I swallowed hard. The rock wasn't just power, it was a weapon. We burst through the exit into a narrow maintenance corridor. The smell hit me first, something metallic, like blood mixed with ozone. Then the sound. Low humming, vibrating through the walls. Patel stopped, pressing her back to the cold brick. That's coming from the old storage tunnels, the ones beneath Yard 2. You mean the ones sealed off after the riot 5 years ago? She nodded. That meteor landed somewhere beneath us, and this whole thing, it's spreading from there. A cold dread settled in my chest. If Grayson was the spark, then whatever was down there was the fire. We had to go back. Not to fight. To stop it. The stairwell down to the storage tunnels was narrow, claustrophobic, layers of dust and rust clinging to the metal steps. Every echo of our footsteps bounced back like a warning. Patel's flashlight cut through the darkness, the beam trembling just slightly in her grip. I swallowed down the knot in my throat and followed her into the void beneath the prison. The air grew colder as we descended, and an unmistakable metallic scent grew stronger, like iron left out in the rain. Then came the hum. It wasn't mechanical, not electrical. It was alive. A low, resonant vibration, like the heartbeat of something huge and ancient buried deep underground. We reached the bottom and found ourselves in a cavernous room, walls lined with pipes and cables, thick with condensation. The faint glow of something pulsing in the far corner drew us closer. There it was. The meteor. Half buried in the cracked concrete floor, still radiating that eerie glow, a sickly mix of blue and green, as if it was breathing. Patel knelt, her fingers brushing the surface cautiously. "Whatever this is," she whispered, "it's not just rock. It's changing the entire prison's atmosphere, probably affecting the inmates, the guards, even the structure itself." I looked around. This was no accident. "This place was built on top of it," I said. "Maybe the original architects knew." Before we could react, a shuffling sound came from the shadows. Figures stepped forward, guards and inmates alike, eyes vacant, faces pale. Grayson emerged last, his silhouette sharp against the glowing meteor. "You found the heart," he said softly. "Now the prison truly belongs to me." Patel raised her weapon, but Grayson held up a hand. "Don't," he warned. "You don't understand. This isn't evil. It's evolution." My fingers tightened on my shotgun. "Not if it destroys everything you're supposed to protect." The air thickened with tension. The battle for the soul of the prison was just beginning. Grayson's voice echoed off the damp walls, every word heavy with conviction. "This place was never just stone and steel," he said, stepping closer to the meteor's eerie glow. "It was a cage for the weak, but that ends now." Patel tightened her grip on her shotgun, eyes never leaving him. "We didn't come here to listen to your manifesto, Grayson. We came to stop this." He laughed, a low, chilling sound. "You can't stop evolution. You can't shut down the spark that's lighting a new path." Suddenly, the meteor pulsed brighter, sending waves of cold that bit into my bones. The infected guards and inmates stepped forward, their movements unnaturally fluid, their vacant eyes fixed on us like they were extensions of Grayson's will. I fired. The slug tore through one of the guard's shoulders, but he barely flinched. Another lunged, and I barely dodged, catching a hard blow to my side that knocked the wind out of me. Patel was fighting back-to-back with me, taking down attackers with sharp precision, but even she was slowing. Grayson raised his hand again. The glow from the meteor intensified, flooding the cavern with blinding light. And then, in a voice that resonated through every fiber of my being, he said, "Join me, or be consumed." I looked at Patel. Her eyes were fierce, but I could see the doubt creeping in, the question of whether there was any choice left. I shook my head, gripping my shotgun tight. "We fight." The light from the meteor washed over us like a tidal wave, chilling the air, bending shadows into monstrous shapes. The infected lunged, their movements eerily synchronized, more like a hive mind than individual attackers. Patel and I fired relentlessly, but each shot seemed to chip away at our hope more than theirs. The more we resisted, the brighter the meteor pulsed, as if feeding on our defiance. Suddenly, I felt a sharp sting in my arm. Something cold and metallic pressed against my skin. I looked down to see a needle-like device embedded just beneath my jacket sleeve. Panic surged through me. "Mo," Patel caught the look in my eyes. "No," she whispered, voice cracking. "They're infecting us, slowly." My mind raced. If this device was a vector, an injection, then the meteor wasn't just giving Grayson power, it was spreading a contagion, a takeover. I ripped the device free, pressing a makeshift tourniquet to my arm. Grayson's laughter echoed, a sound both triumphant and cruel. "Soon, you'll see the truth," he said. "Resistance is futile. Embrace it." I struggled to stay upright, the world tipping sideways, shadows creeping at the edge of my vision. Patel steadied me. "We can't let him win," she said, voice firm despite the fear. "Not here, not like this." Gathering every ounce of strength left, we pushed forward, forcing the infected back step by step, aiming for the meteor. "We can't let him win," she said, voice firm despite the fear. "Not here, not like this." Gathering every ounce of strength left, we pushed forward, forcing the infected back step by step, aiming for the meteor, the heart of this nightmare. It was the only chance we had to stop the infection, stop Grayson, and reclaim the prison before everything turned dark. We pushed deeper into the cavern, the eerie glow from the meteor pulsing like a heartbeat in the dark. Every step felt heavier, the air thick with tension and a scent like ozone and burnt metal. My arm throbbed fiercely where I'd ripped out that needle, burning and numb all at once. Patel was right beside me, eyes scanning, shotgun ready. We were the last line against the spreading darkness. The infected surged again, but this time their movements seemed slower, less coordinated. The longer we resisted, the more I felt the meteor's grip weakening. Or maybe it was hope fighting back. We reached the crater's edge, the meteor glowing brighter, almost alive. Patel pulled out a satchel from her pack, a set of explosive charges designed for structural demolition. "We blow this thing," she said, voice tight. "End it before it spreads." I nodded, loading my weapon. "Cover me." As Patel set the charges, Grayson appeared again, stepping from the shadows like a ghost. "You can't destroy progress," he said softly. "You can only delay it." I aimed my shotgun, but she waved me down. "Wait." Grayson lifted his hand, and the meteor flared wildly, sending a shockwave that threw us both backward. I hit the ground hard, ears ringing. When I looked up, Patel was standing firm, detonator in hand. "Now, Alan," she shouted. I fired into the meteor as Patel pressed the button. The explosion rocked the tunnels, light and heat collided, shadows screaming as the cavern trembled. When the dust settled, the meteor was shattered, fragments glowing dimly on the cracked concrete floor. The infected staggered, disoriented. Grayson lay motionless. For a moment, silence. Then a groan. He stirred. But the light was gone. And for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. The cavern was thick with dust and the acrid smell of burnt ozone. My lungs burned as I pushed myself up from the debris-strewn floor, the aftershock still rattling through my bones. Patel was already on her feet, weapon trained on Grayson, who lay sprawled near the shattered remnants of the meteor. His chest rose and fell, slow and uneven. For once, he looked vulnerable, human. I approached cautiously, eyes locked on his face. The fire in his gaze had dimmed, but hadn't vanished. "You lost," I said, voice hoarse. He smiled, a bitter, hollow thing. "Or maybe," he whispered, "I just changed the game." Behind him, The remaining infected were disoriented but still alive. Some groaned, others just stared blankly. The infection wasn't gone, just fractured. Patel's voice broke through the silence. We need to contain the damage, reinforce the quarantine, and get medical in here, fast. As we moved to secure the area, a cold realization settled over me. The meteor's power was broken, for now, but its impact was permanent. The prison wasn't the same, and neither were we. I glanced at Patel. We survived. She nodded, grim but relieved. For now. The days after the explosion blurred into a surreal mix of lockdowns, interviews, and whispered rumors. The prison was a skeleton of itself, the yard still cordoned off with temporary fencing and guarded by twice the usual number of officers. Patel and I worked tirelessly, logging what little evidence we could, checking on the infected who had been subdued, and trying to piece together how much of the meteor's influence had seeped into the facility's veins. The administration was tight-lipped, but the look in Warden Briggs's eyes told me everything. Damage control, above all else. But beneath the official calm, something else lingered. Fear of what the future held. The meteor's shattered fragments had been removed, or so we were told, but the whispers among the inmates were different. They spoke of a darkness beneath the prison, of voices carried on the cold wind, and of Grayson's cult still waiting in the shadows. One evening, I stood by the barred window of my small office, watching the snow fall quietly over the cold stone walls. Patel came in, closing the door behind her. "We're going to have to live with this now," she said softly. I nodded. "But we'll be ready next time." She gave a small, tired smile. For now, we survive. Outside, the prison settled into an uneasy silence. But I knew it wouldn't be quiet for long. The weeks that followed were a slow unraveling. The physical scars were visible, blackened walls, shattered glass, scorched concrete, but it was the unseen wounds that gnawed at us. I started having nightmares. Not about the fire or the fight, but the stillness afterward. The vacant eyes of those infected, the pulsing glow of that cursed meteor, the way Grayson's voice echoed inside my head. At night, I'd wake gasping, certain the walls around me were closing in. Patel was no different. I caught her staring off during briefings, her hands trembling as she cleaned her weapon. The others tried to put on a brave face, but the tension was thick as ice. The administration arranged counseling sessions, but they felt hollow, bureaucratic attempts to paper over something far deeper. Then came the new rumors. Whispers of unexplained power outages in nearby towns, disappearances, and sightings. Shadows moving beneath the snow, voices carried on the wind. I told myself it was just paranoia, but deep down, I knew. The meteor's influence hadn't died. It had simply changed form, and we were left to face the long, cold aftermath. I started noticing small changes. Light bulbs flickering in corridors that hadn't been damaged. Radios crackling with static in the dead of night. Cold spots, areas of the prison where the temperature would drop 10, sometimes 15 degrees, even though the heating system was stable. Then one morning I found my locker door open. Not forced, just unlatched, even though I lock it every night with the same rigid ritual. Inside was my regulation vest, folded wrong. It wasn't how I left it. When I brought it up to maintenance, they gave me a flat stare. "No one logged into your section after lights out," they said. "You sure you didn't just forget?" That was the beginning. Later that week, Patel and I were checking inventory records when we noticed something odd. Grayson's ID number had been logged into the system at 2:42 a.m. He was in isolation. No one had touched that terminal in hours. We raced to his cell. Grayson sat on the bench, chained and cuffed, eyes half shut like he was in some kind of trance. His head tilted slowly as we entered. He looked directly at me. "Just a ripple," he murmured. "You broke the stone, but the water's still moving." Patel stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "How are you accessing the system?" Grayson didn't answer. He just smiled and tapped the side of his temple. "We filed a report. demanded a full digital lockdown. The tech team replaced every admin code that had been exposed during the event. But the next morning, another login. This time from my own credentials. It was like something was still inside the system, using us. Like the meteor hadn't just infected bodies. It had rooted itself somewhere deeper. In the network. In the infrastructure. In us. By the third unauthorized system breach, Patel stopped pretending we were just dealing with glitches. We took over one of the admin offices at the top of C Block, hauled in a backup server, and started going through logs ourselves, line by line, hour by hour, every motion sensor ping, every login timestamp, every maintenance override. And the pattern revealed itself. Every breach happened at exactly 2:42 a.m. No variation, not even by a second. That's not someone sneaking in, Patel muttered. That's a timed process. Automated or programmed, I said, finishing the thought. But by who? She turned her laptop screen toward me. Look. The login signature each time was masked under a rotating proxy, something we never used in our system. The only place I'd seen anything like it? Grayson's private block. The one we'd sealed. The one still under 24-hour camera surveillance. I pulled up the feed. Cell 09. Empty. Not empty as in abandoned. Empty as in vacant. No bunk, no chains, no Grayson. My pulse spiked. Wait, he was just in there yesterday. Patel looked pale. She checked the archived footage. The last image we had of Grayson was from 2 nights ago. Since then, nothing. The camera had looped the same 30 seconds of footage. The same blink. The same shift in posture. A loop. Someone's covering their tracks, she whispered. I stood up, suddenly cold. Or something. The walk back to Grayson's wing felt longer than it should have. Every step echoed off the cold concrete like a warning. Each door we passed, each flickering light, another reminder that whatever false sense of control we'd reclaimed was already slipping. Cell 09 sat at the end of the block, untouched, or at least it looked that way on the surface. Patel keyed in the override and opened the door. The first thing we noticed was the smell. Not rot, damp, earthy, like the air after a thunderstorm, heavy with minerals, the kind of smell that doesn't belong inside walls. The cell was sterile, the bed still bolted to the floor, chain loops anchored to the wall, but the drain in the center of the floor, where we used to hose down the cell after restraints, was uncovered. Patel knelt and shined her flashlight down the narrow, rust-ringed pipe. Then she froze. Alan, she whispered. There's no pipe. There's a hole, a crawl space. I crouched beside her. The drain had been drilled wider from underneath, rough, uneven edges, like someone had chipped their way through with primitive tools or bare hands. No, not someone. Grayson. The decision to crawl into that tunnel was less about bravery and more about inevitability. We couldn't let Grayson slip further into the prison's veins. Whatever he was becoming, whatever the meteor had started, he was spreading it. Slowly, silently, like a cancer. Patel went first, gripping her sidearm tight, flashlight strapped to her wrist. I followed close. Every inch we crawled deeper into the understructure, making me feel less like a guard and more like prey. The air inside was stale, but not dead. Something moved it, a current, a draft, faint whispers of air from deeper inside, where the light didn't reach. The tunnel curved, then split into two. Patel paused at the fork, shining her light down both. Left's warmer, she murmured. Air's moving. Then that's where he went, I said. Nothing about Grayson was ever cold. We took the left path. Within 50 feet, the tunnel opened up into a hidden service chamber, an old utilities substation from the original build, probably abandoned decades ago. But someone had made it a home. Crude bedding. Stacks of journals. Wiring from the prison's camera systems spliced into an old analog monitor. Someone had turned this into a watch station. Patel stepped forward, picking up one of the journals. They're handwritten. I scanned the monitors, some still active, cycling through hallways, solitary cells, break rooms. He'd been watching us. All of us. Patel read aloud, slowly, eyes narrowing with each word. The meteor was never the beginning. It was a trigger. We were always wired for this. The stone just reminded us what we are beneath the noise. She flipped the page. It's like a manifesto. Pages of it, diagrams, notes on staff routines, meal logs. I felt it then, like something watching us. I turned, light sweeping behind, and caught movement at the far end of the tunnel. A figure, just outside the beam's reach, retreating silently into the dark. Grayson. He's drawing us in, I said. Patel closed the journal and holstered her weapon. Then let's finish it. And we stepped into the dark after him. The tunnel narrowed as we followed him. The air thickened, heavy with moisture and the smell of earth soaked in rust. It felt like we were passing into something older than the prison itself. The brickwork here wasn't from the blueprints we knew. It was older, layered beneath the foundation, like this space had been swallowed whole by the facility decades ago and simply forgotten. But Grayson hadn't forgotten. He lived here now. The path curved sharply, then opened into a circular chamber, domed with corroded steel and lined with discarded furniture, broken filing cabinets, torn pages stuck to the walls with rusted nails. The meteor fragments, the ones we were told had been removed, were here. Dozens of them, arranged in a spiral around the center of the room. And in the middle of it all, kneeling like a man in prayer, was Grayson, his back to us. Unmoving. Patel raised her weapon. Grayson. He didn't turn, didn't flinch, but he spoke, softly, like a father waking his child. I tried to leave, he said. I did, but it won't let me. I stepped forward, careful not to cross the spiral. What is this? He slowly rose to his feet. His movements were slow, deliberate. The same man we'd faced before, but thinner now, hollowed, like the meteor had been feeding on him. This is what's left, he said, of me, of all of us. You think you stopped it, but the meteor was just the voice. The real signal was buried long before we arrived. Patel frowned. What are you talking about? Grayson finally turned, and in the dim red glow of the chamber's emergency lights, I saw his eyes. Not black, not glowing, just human, tired. He held out his hand. In it, his own dog tag. I want to end it, he said, but not by dying. I want you to see it, all of it, what it wants, what it built. Patel looked at me. I didn't move. Not yet. We had come for answers. Now we were standing in the center of them. And the only way out was through whatever Grayson was about to show us. Grayson didn't wait for us to agree. He turned and walked through a breach in the chamber wall, an opening I hadn't seen until that moment. It looked like it had been blasted open years ago, its jagged edges lined with old scorch marks and collapsed stone. Patel looked at me, hesitant. I gave her a nod, and we followed. The tunnel beyond was older than anything above, walls carved out of raw earth, supported by crumbling wooden beams, blackened with time. The silence down here wasn't just deep, it was total. No echo, no hum of distant generators, just our breath, our boots, and the quiet shuffle of Grayson ahead of us. This was here before the prison, he said, his voice flat. Before the blueprints, before the steel. Someone built over it, like they wanted to keep it buried. Patel's light skimmed across the wall, symbols carved into the stone, circles, repeating lines, not writing exactly, but patterns, familiar in a way I couldn't explain, like the kind of thing you only remember from dreams. We finally emerged into a vast subterranean space, shaped like a bowl. At the center was a pedestal of fused stone and rusted rebar. Suspended above it, by what I couldn't even tell, was the core fragment. The original. Unlike the others, this one wasn't cracked or dull. It was perfect. And it was humming. I found it 6 days before the meteor hit, Grayson said quietly. There were vibrations in the walls. No one believed me. Then it fell, and everything changed. He looked at me then, for the first time, not as an adversary. I think it called to the one that fell, like a beacon. My stomach turned. You're saying this one didn't fall from the sky? No, he whispered. This one's been here for centuries. Patel lowered her weapon, stunned. And the one from space? Answered it, I finished. The humming grew louder, just slightly, a rhythm, a pulse. I suddenly felt it behind my eyes, like pressure building. Patel grabbed my shoulder. We need to shut this down, now. But I could barely move, because deep inside that impossible hum something was waking up. Something older than the prison, older than us. And we had just stepped into its memory. The hum wasn't sound anymore. It was inside us. I could feel it weaving into my thoughts like static in a bad signal, stitching doubt into every corner of my mind. Memories stuttered, names, places, dates, like someone had shaken a snow globe of my past and let the pieces fall where they wanted. Patel stumbled beside me, pressing her palm hard against her temple. It's in my head, she whispered. It's trying to make me forget who I am. Grayson stood at the edge of the pit, staring up at the core fragment with something close to reverence. This is the end of the road, he said, or the beginning. I turned to him, voice tight. You brought us down here to destroy this thing. Don't forget that. He looked at me with hollow eyes. I didn't forget, but now I don't know if we're supposed to. The pulsing from the fragment increased. The stone wasn't just alive. It was aware. It had been waiting for someone like Grayson. Someone like us. Alan. Patel's voice was barely audible. I can't hold on to myself much longer. She fumbled in her jacket and pulled out a final charge, military grade. Small, dense, just enough to shatter a power transformer. Or, in this case, a piece of ancient, impossible stone. I say we finish it, she said, forcing the words out through clenched teeth, before it finishes us. Grayson took a slow step forward. You'll never get another chance to understand it, he said, to become what it wants. I raised my shotgun and leveled it at him. I don't want to become anything, I said. I want to leave this place whole. He didn't blink. Then you've already lost. Patel armed the charge and tossed it to me. I caught it, my hand shaking. The hum was so loud now I couldn't hear my own thoughts. Just one decision. One move. One shot at ending it all. I turned toward the fragment. And I ran. I ran. The hum became a scream, not in my ears, but in my head, like 1,000 voices trying to claw their way to the surface. I didn't look at Grayson. I didn't look back at Patel. I focused on the pedestal and the fragment above it, glowing like the heart of a dying star. Each step felt like wading through molasses. The air was thicker, electric, like the space itself was resisting me. Alan. Patel's voice was faint behind me. Do it now. I skidded to a stop at the edge of the platform. My knees buckled as I dropped, slapping the charge against the fused rock. I armed it with trembling fingers. 30 seconds. That's all we had. I turned, and there was Grayson. He moved like a shadow out of place, one hand reaching toward me, the other trembling. His face was gaunt, pale, skin stretched too thin across bone. His eyes flickered, not with power, but with fear. You don't understand, he rasped. It's not just here. It's not just us. This thing, it's a signal, a lighthouse. You destroy it, and others will know we tried to hide. I backed away, gun raised. Then let them come. We'll be ready. He lunged. I pulled the trigger. The shot caught him in the chest. He dropped with a sound like deflation. Less a scream, more like wind leaving a corpse. I turned and sprinted back toward Patel. The timer ticked louder than my heartbeat. 10 seconds. She grabbed my hand. We dove behind the nearest wall of collapsed stone, hit the ground hard. The chamber erupted. A white-hot blast of force and sound tore through the tunnel, sucking the air from our lungs. Stone cracked, metal twisted. The hum died mid-scream, severed like a power line cut at the source. Silence. Then dust. Then stillness. We stayed down for minutes, coughing and blinking through debris, until Patel finally sat up, scraped and shaking. "It's gone," she whispered. I nodded, too exhausted to speak. We climbed to our feet and turned toward the crater where the core once hovered. Nothing but ash and rubble. Grayson was gone. So was the signal. But I still didn't feel relief. Just silence, and a sense that something had noticed. We climbed out in silence, using what was left of the utility ladders bolted to the walls. The tunnel groaned above us, shifting like a living thing in its final breaths, threatening to collapse. It didn't matter. We didn't plan on coming back. As we neared the sub-level hatch that fed back into the prison's lower maintenance corridor, my legs buckled. Patel caught my arm, blood smeared across her cheek, hair singed, eyes bloodshot, but alive. When we pushed open the door, we were greeted by a hallway drenched in emergency red. Sirens blared, slower now, echoing like dying heartbeat monitors. The cameras above us sparked and fizzled. Monitors along the walls displayed nothing but static. We moved through the chaos like ghosts. No other guards, no sounds of inmates, not even radio chatter, just that slow, pulsing emergency light painting the corridors in surreal strobe. Patel keyed her walkie. "Control, this is Patel. Alan and I are alive. We've neutralized the core. Repeat, we've..." Nothing. Just static. We reached the main hallway that connected to D Block. It was empty, entirely abandoned. Cells were closed, lights out. The place looked frozen in time. "I don't like this," I muttered. "Something's off." We rounded the corner into central processing and stopped. Standing in the middle of the room was Warden Briggs, but he didn't turn, didn't move, just stood there, his back to us, staring at one of the wall monitors flickering with static. "Warden?" Patel asked, stepping closer. He twitched, then turned. His face was blank, his eyes unfocused, like he wasn't really in there. And then he spoke, voice calm, detached. "You broke the fragment." Patel raised her weapon again. "Sir, what happened here?" He blinked slowly. "We are the antennae. We've always been the antennae. They just needed someone to aim the signal." I stepped back. Patel and I exchanged a glance. The core was gone. But something had escaped. Not a creature. Not a monster. A message. And someone, somewhere, had received it. Patel didn't hesitate. She grabbed the warden by the collar and slammed him against the wall. "What did you hear?" she snapped. "What signal?" He didn't resist, didn't even blink, just kept smiling, that slow, dazed smile. "It's already started," he said. "We're just the beginning." I pulled Patel off him. "Leave him. He's gone." She hesitated, then nodded. We backed out of processing, weapons up, eyes scanning every shadow. The power was starting to flicker back on, doors resetting, hydraulics whining to life, but there were still no signs of staff. No inmates. It was like the prison had exhaled everyone but us. The halls grew brighter the closer we got to the exit bay, but the silence only deepened. The kind of quiet that didn't feel natural. The kind you hear before a thunderclap. At the security checkpoint, the monitors all displayed the same thing. A symbol. Not text, not video feed. Just a pulsing ring, black and gray, spinning infinitely inward, like a drain. "I've seen that before," Patel said, pointing at it. She was right. It was carved into the walls in the tunnel, etched into the meteor fragments. And now it was on every screen in the prison. I turned to the gate controls. Manual override wasn't responding. The entire system was locked out. Red lit keys, dead terminals, and that symbol cycling over and over again. Backup generators probably fried, I muttered. Patel stepped back from the monitors, breathing hard. What if it's not mechanical? What if it's still inside the system? The thought hit me like ice water down my spine. We'd destroyed the core, but not the signal. The meteor had never been about brute force. It had been about broadcasting. And somewhere between the blast and Grayson's escape, it had reached someone else. I think we need to get out on foot, I said. Now. We turned toward the access tunnels beneath the east wing, our last option out. But before we could take another step, the overhead speakers crackled. Not static this time. A voice. Ours. Mine and Patel's, looping back at us in fragments from the past few hours. Don't look at it. Keep moving. We were always the antennae. We're just the beginning. The system had absorbed us, copied us, and now it was speaking, not with a new language, with ours. The voice faded, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed down on us like a weight. Patel's grip tightened on her weapon, eyes darting to every corner, every shadow. The whole place is listening, she said quietly. We can't trust the comms, not anymore. I nodded, swallowing hard. The only choice was the access tunnels, dark, narrow, and crawling with echoes of forgotten maintenance workers and shut-off systems. We sprinted down the corridor, hearts pounding, boots slapping against the cold metal grates. Every sound was amplified, the drip of water, the hum of failing generators, the distant clang of loose pipes. The farther we went, the heavier the air felt, as if the prison itself was breathing, watching, waiting. Then the lights flickered and went out entirely. Total darkness swallowed us. I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam cutting a weak line through the black. A whisper came from the darkness, too faint to make out, but unmistakably human. Alan. Patel. I froze. Keep moving, Patel urged, voice barely above a whisper. We pressed forward, footsteps echoing off the steel walls. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber, one I'd never seen before. Massive cables snaked along the walls, pulsing faintly with energy. In the center stood a console, ancient, covered in dust, but alive with light. And on the screen, the symbol, the spinning ring. It wasn't just a mark. It was a signal. The prison was no longer just a building. It was a transmitter, a beacon, and somehow it had made us part of its broadcast. Patel swallowed hard. What do we do now? I took a breath, my mind racing. We stop it, no matter the cost. The hum from the console was low but steady, a heartbeat beneath the metal shell of the prison itself. Patel and I approached cautiously, the air thick with static and the weight of every failed attempt that must have come before us. This has to be the core of the signal, I said, kneeling to examine the controls. Patel scanned the screen, her fingers flying over the keys with practiced precision. It's broadcasting on multiple frequencies, satellite, radio, even cellular signals. If we don't shut this down, it's going beyond these walls. I swallowed hard. The thought of that transmission reaching out, infecting minds beyond the prison's boundaries, was unbearable. We need to disable the power source first, Patel said. There should be a backup generator somewhere nearby. We moved quickly, guided by the pulsing cables that led us down another narrow passage, deeper into the bowels of the prison. The faint red glow of emergency lights flickered overhead, barely cutting through the darkness. When we reached the generator room, it was silent, too silent. The door was ajar. Inside, the machines were humming. The backup was online. Someone, or something, had anticipated our move. Patel pointed to the console, where a timer counted down. 30 minutes until full power restoration, she said grimly. I drew my gun. We cut it now, I said, before it finishes. We got to work, Patel disabling circuits while I stood guard, every nerve on edge. The hum grew louder, the cables vibrating in time with the countdown. At the last second, Patel pulled the emergency shutoff. The machines shuddered and died. The silence that followed was absolute. We waited. Then the console in the transmitter room flickered and went dark. The prison fell into a hush. We had stopped it. But as we made our way back toward the surface, I couldn't shake the feeling that the signal wasn't just a thing to destroy. It was a warning. A signal sent across time and space, one we barely understood. And I knew, with a cold certainty, that the story wasn't over. We emerged from the emergency exit into gray morning light. The air was sharp and cold, but after everything underground, it felt clean, pure. I paused on the ridge, gulping it down, scanning the horizon. Trees, fences, towers. Familiar shapes under an unfamiliar stillness. Patel followed close behind, hand still tight around her sidearm. We were out, but our bodies hadn't caught up to the idea yet. Every sound made us flinch. Every shift in wind felt like a threat. "We need to contact the Bureau," she muttered, brushing dust from her face. "Tell them what's down there before someone else finds it." I nodded slowly, my eyes on the tree line, assuming we're still on the Bureau's good side. We reached the service road where our vehicle had been parked hours ago, still there, untouched. But the moment I unlocked the door and sat behind the wheel, the radio crackled to life. "Repeat, requesting confirmation of anomaly containment at Red Echo facility." Patel turned toward me. "Did they just say Red Echo?" I leaned into the mic. "This is Sergeant Allen, formerly stationed at Whetstone Penitentiary. We've neutralized the core threat. Transmitters disabled. 2 survivors. Repeat, 2. Silence. Then static. Then a different voice. Calm. Too calm. "Sergeant Allen, your report is noted. Please remain on site. Recovery agents have been dispatched. Do not attempt to leave the area." Patel reached for the mic. "We need evac now. There's no one left in the prison. The signal got into..." Click. They cut transmission. Dead silence. I looked at her. "They're not coming to help us." "No," she said quietly. "They're coming to contain us." She was right. This wasn't cleanup. This was lockdown. And somewhere beneath our feet,